Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the iRacing Today radio show for October the 23rd, 2015. This is show number 118. If you're only counting these shows, I believe we're like 150, I think it was one of our teammates pointed out the other day. If we count the shows during my solo tenure, before, when the band broke up and I did my solo career, but I did it opposite and started my solo career before I decided to join the band. My name is Trevor Cameron. I'm the band leader and the trombone player, which is weird because I can't play the trombone. Beside me, I have on drums, Mr. Chad Dalton. How you doing tonight, Chad?
I also play the ukulele.
The ukulele? Like not enough bands.
Yeah, just because of the name.
Yeah, well, I mean, not enough bands have ukuleles in them. I mean, I think all bands should have, like, the accordion is a highly misunderstood instrument. I mean, there are several songs I really like that have a good accordion sound in them. So, I mean,
Yeah.
But welcome to a bit of an odd show, I'd say. It's a little bit upside down, where actually the experiences seem to outweigh everything else that's been going on. We do have some news to talk to you guys about this week. Mostly, well, one big story and then one big deal where we may get reductive if you do not take advantage of this deal and you have not a member of iRacing. We might make fun of you. I will warn you. But we will get to that in a minute. Talk a little bit about those fun races that are coming up. And mostly, we are going to be talking about our experiences this past week because we've had a bunch of them. One of which has caused a rift between Chad and I. I mean, sure, we're being all cordial now, but, there's some divisions in the ranks here, I'd say. I mean, there's hurt feelings.
I would just like to point out on the show that I'm really glad that Trevor is actually speaking to me. I mean, this is like the first time all week.
But in any event, and also I will mention that this is you get a live simulcast? No, there's probably another extra L in there. Simulcast? Anyway, we will call this the Distracted show as well because it is now Game 6 of the American League Championship Series between the Blue Jays and the Kansas City Royals. And, of course, as a Canadian, I root for the Jays because we only have one team. What else am I going to do? So, and it is a close game. If the Jays lose, they are eliminated. I have MLB Game Day over on my other monitor, so I just kind of keep an eye on the game, so I may occasionally shout out for no particular reason and confuse you all. It'll be even more confusing to those who aren't watching live because they'll be all like listening to this on like Sunday afternoon after everything's been all determined, and they'll be all like, what is it? That game was days ago. What are you even talking about? So
that's true.
And also we want to get the show done quickly because I picked up Guitar Hero Live the other day, and that game is a heck of a lot of fun, and I want to go play that. So, but you know what? Because of our commitment on a Friday night, my wife is out of town. Like, it's guilt-free gaming time because my wife is gone doing her own things. I can just be playing video games like all night. Well, other than the parenting thing, I got to make sure the kids are okay. Put some water in the corner and some kibble or something. I don't know how parenting works. I'm new to this thing. It's only been 10 years, but anyway. So glad you guys could join us and all of that stuff. Oh, and as somebody's mentioned in the live chat, in case you haven't watched a live show in a while, Chad has been replaced by a fast-moving car racing around Bristol. His internet situation does not allow him to video into the show at this point in time, so until he gets that all straightened away, we only get the audio version of Chad and the visual version of me, which leads to a lot of me staring at the camera while Chad talks about his experiences, which is just as creepy for me as it is for you, just so we're clear on that. But moving into the news, iRacing kind of pulled a, hey, here's something we're like out of the blue kind of thing on us this week. I mean, I didn't see it coming, and all of a sudden I just saw, I don't remember, even remember where I saw it. I think somebody had tweeted it out, and it wasn't even iRacing or something, about some interesting additions to the service and adding value to new members, for more particularly as opposed to us veterans. But what did they do, Chad?
Well, they added more base content stuff. So basically, if you sign up, if you sign up right now for iRacing, you're going to get more content as a part of your subscription package than you would have if you'd have signed up like 2 weeks ago. So they've added 8 additional laser scan cars and tracks to its base level package, and of course it is free of charge, which we like free. The new and us current veteran members of the simulation will now receive the bonus of 5 additional cars and 3 tracks as a part of our memberships. Memberships, depending on how you look at it. The additions bring the amount of free content to a total of 12 cars and 13 tracks, with a total, of 28 different track configurations. So quite a lot of free content and a lot of fun to be had. Tony Gardner, the president of iRacing.com, said, "We are always trying to add more value to the online racing membership, whether that is through additional content, new features, or new racing opportunities." He then goes on to say, "As a recognized leader in licensed laser scanned content, there is truly something for every sim racing taste in iRacing's newly expanded base package. And that new package includes the NASCAR Truck Series Chevy Silverado," the one from 2013, so the outdated truck. The NASCAR Sprint Cup Chevy Impala COT, basically the car of tomorrow. So, again, the 2013 old car.
The car of yesterday.
The car of yesterday. The NASCAR Nationwide Chevrolet Impala, again, 2011 old car. And the V8 Supercar Ford Falcon, 2012 one, which was the original V8 car that we had before we got the 2 new ones. With the Holden and the new Ford Falcon. And then the old Dallara IndyCar from 2011, before the new one that we have currently. All of that, car-wise, is being added to the base package. And the following tracks will be added as well. And that is one of Trevor's favorites in Concord Speedway, being added to the free package, which I think is pretty interesting, actually, because it's not like Concord is old. But it's one of those tracks that's used in some of the lower divisions more so than the bigger divisions. So I can see how they did it, but at the same time, it kind of surprised me a little bit. But then again, you think about Oxford, it's free.
As it should
anyways.
be. And then,
what?
I said, as it should be, and then filled with concrete. And turned into a swimming pool.
Yes. Daytona International Speedway, the road and the oval configuration from the old track, so the old bumpy 2007 version, which I personally love. But anyways, the old Daytona is now free, which is cool because a lot of people like that old version as well, and a lot of leagues still use it and hosted rooms still use it. And last but not least is the old Phoenix International Raceway from 2008. So...
Yeah, so I was going to say, so when you kind of look at it, at its base level, what they've done, I mean, not to be dismissive of it, because free content is free content, and anybody who's signing up, now will have this. And to be clear, if you were already a member, you also get this. You don't have to be a new member to get this content. But basically, they've freed up a lot of their outdated content, as you can see. The only one in there that really actually hasn't been replaced by a newer version of track/car is Concord, and which is why it's a little bit shocking that it's in there. Although I'm glad to see it in there because, as I mentioned before, it is one of my favorite tracks, so being part of the base content, there's a good chance it will be used more in different series as well, because everybody has it. Oops, and I just whacked my mic, so that's exciting. And so you may be thinking, well, what the heck am I going to do with all this content? Because it's outdated, and it's obviously not going to be used in the official series. And you're mostly right. And when I say mostly right, is the fact that they took the next step to create a couple of series to actually use this content to give you something other than the Carb Cup to look forward to in the non-official fun series that's ongoing at all times. Although the F1, are they still doing that fun one? I don't remember.
No, they're not.
Okay, I thought they'd canceled that out, but so it's just the Carb Cup that you have as a choice. And if you're not, say, I don't know, a big super speedway fan, then that series doesn't do a lot for you. Not to mention the fact that it hits Daytona, Talladega, and Charlotte, and now Monza, and only one of those tracks is free. And the A Cup car also not free. Well, that's about to change, because now they have created 2 new series: the Dallara Dash, which features the old Indy car, at Phoenix, obviously, you know which one, the one that they just gave you, Phoenix, Charlotte, which was already free, and Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, which was always free as well. And the Pickup Cup, that is just fun to say, the Pickup Cup featuring, see, you can't even say that without a southern accent. Excuse me. The Pickup Cup, there you go, you have to really try, featuring the NASCAR, oh, dang it, Chevy Silverado at Daytona, Phoenix, and Charlotte. Those races are already open and ready for you guys to go out and enjoy. And to be clear, they are unofficial series, so they are like the Carb Cup, where safety rating, iRating does not count. Does not mean to go out there and be a jerk face. It means that, hey, just relax, have fun, and don't worry about accidents that happen. Do not necessarily cause them, because even though they're fun races, you can totally still be protested for being a doofus in those races. So, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where, yes, it's cool, but they haven't really. I guess it's speaking from a member that's been around for a while. They haven't really given anything that probably shouldn't have been free anyway, I guess. I mean, those cars and series are only used basically in hosted series or league racing if anybody chooses to use them. And now these 2 new series, so I'm glad they went that extra step and said, hey, you know what? It's free content. It's something for you to try out. It's something different to try. And also, here's a reason to do it, kind of thing. So, But, of course, we all, me and Chad already own all this stuff because that's who we is. Although, yeah, I'm pretty sure I own the Ford Falcon. Yeah, I did. Okay. I wasn't sure for a minute there.
Well, here's something else that's really cool about this that is not mentioned in the iRacing press release for whatever ridiculous reason, but is the fact that this gives us more options for our fun races. Because now,
exactly,
more of you that may not have a lot of the content, which there are a good chunk of you that listen to our show, that are either new or, even if you've been on for a while, don't own all the content. And so therefore, we usually try to go for the free content in our fun races so that everyone has a chance to race. Now, sometimes we've obviously used paid content, but so I'm kind of excited about that because there are a few combinations that are a lot of fun that I think we should try. Like the old Daytona track in the truck or in even the IndyCar might be interesting. Because I've raced Indy cars on plate tracks, and believe it or not, people, they are a very fun combo.
I was going to say terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're only going like 230, but who cares?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah,
and that's in mile per hour.
Bill Elliott went at least that fast, didn't he?
Yeah.
Back before they put the restrictor plates
I
on.
think he went 250. But basically, I'm excited about that because that gives us a little bit more options so that we can have more fun. So, anyways, I'm kind of like Trevor though. Otherwise, it's just kind of like, yeah, well, it's old stuff. It kind of makes sense to make it free. And I'm glad that they made those 2 series as well. And I look forward to trying them. I haven't yet, but I look forward to trying them for the heck of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean the old I mean, the new IndyCar is a lot of fun, as you know we've kind of been discussing. I've been having a lot of fun with that. So to just to have a fun way to just go out there and a stress-free way of racing could be a lot of fun. So my first thought was, well, you know what? That means we could probably have the one of the fun races at at Concord. And then I thought, oh yeah, remember what happened last time Trevor got to pick the track, and it was one of his favorite short tracks. And remember what happened when a bunch of road racers came out and everything went bad, and we spent a lot of time under yellow. Yeah, that'd probably be like double at Concord. So maybe we won't do that.
We could just turn the yellows off.
Let's see.
I'm sure all the road racers would like that, anyways.
That would,
because I remember all the conversations we had where they were like, "Yellows are stupid. We don't want to talk to anybody."
Yeah, I mean, and road racers are just used to just driving around the wrecks as opposed to being slowed down for them. So I mean, they'd be right in their wheelhouse. So
yeah, see, be like an all-out demolition derby.
Okay, and if we that just reminded me of something. I was just thinking that as a side note, once we get our new DX11 update, and we get this is again Trevor's fantasy world. We get debris out on the track from from cars actually crashing. Now that we have the particle effects and all that good stuff going on, and I was thinking that if they go that far and we have debris on the track during road races, that they model brave Russian marshals to run out onto the track and pick it up, such as happened at Sochi the other a couple weeks ago at the Russian Grand Prix, where, man, I don't know if you saw that because you're not an F1 guy, but there was a piece,
I heard about it.
There was a piece of a rear wing out on the track, and dude just ran out. It's like. And the camera angle, like Sebastian Vettel just came right around the corner, like just as he was starting to run off the track. It's like, you are nuts, sir.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah,
wow.
I heard about it.
Yeah, I watched it like I was, well, not live, but on DVR watching the race, and it's like watching that. It's like, and then just comes on the on the radio. It's like, there's a very brave Russian out here. It's like just matter of factly. Oh yeah. By the way, guy on the track, much like at Singapore. No, is it Singapore? Anyway, there's a fan on the track there too. Everybody stay off the bloody tracks. Tracks for cars and debris, and occasionally rabbits. But so anyway, we've got some new options, and that was what a couple of fans actually tweeted us afterwards, saying, "Hey, well, this gives us some more options for fun races, and we're probably going to take advantage of that." So.
Yeah, and speaking of our fun races, we're still shooting for November.
Yes.
So keep sending in your suggestions to feedback@iRacingTodayRadio.com. It's a very key part of that sentence. And for only like 2 of our listeners. The rest of you can do whatever you want, but 2 very specific people are not allowed to tweet.
Just ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Your accounts have been suspended. But so we're not going to nail down our date. Maybe next week we'll have a date nailed down because we're going to be like a week from November next week. So
yeah,
we'll try to get that nailed down by next week and let you guys know. And again, we'll try to accommodate the time zones for everybody to where all of you hopefully can race, but obviously not all of you are going to make it because it's just kind of impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I almost think that we should just make our race times in GMT now because I don't know about you, but like, I don't know, 3 out of 5 friend requests I get on iRacing, maybe 4 out of 5, it's UK and Ireland or Australia, New Zealand, or like it's always that side of the world. So apparently those are the only people who listen. Americans, Canadians, we know you're out there, but I mean, you are being far outweighed. I mean, it's a really good thing that Chad and I have really dived into our road racing roots. No, I suppose I don't actually have roots because I've never really done it. I mean, we're getting into more of the road racing because, that's more popular on, that side of the world. So it's a good thing that we're getting back more into road racing because I think all of our listeners are road racers. It's from what I can tell.
Probably, yeah.
But if, let's say you said, wow, there's some new free content. That's cool. If only, oh, shucky darn, if only I was a member of that iRacing thing, I could try these things that Chad and Trevor are talking about. But, oh, well, it's too expensive. Then what would we say to them, Chad?
We'd say, let's see, how shall I put this? Do you know the value of $1? Because iRacing is now running a special promotion until October the 30th, which is kind of a weird date to end this. But anyways, we couldn't go the one extra day.
Well, I mean, you don't want to infringe on Halloween. Everybo's going to be out trick-or-treating and not racing.
Yeah, well, trick-or-treating, racing, trick-or-treating, racing. It's a balance. So anyways, you got until 10/30/2015. And basically, what you can do is you can claim the brand new bonus content along with the original bonus content or the free base content and get a 1-month subscription to iRacing for literally $1.
That's right. We keep talking about all of these wonderful deals and promotions that they put out, but now it's just gotten ridiculous because literally $1.
Yeah. Now it's basically like, you know what? Just have an account. We don't care. Welcome to the sim. So yeah, $1 until October 30th, 2015. And as we've already mentioned, they've increased that base content. 12 cars, 14 tracks, 28 different track configurations. And, of course, this promotion, which you may have figured out already, is only valid for new members signing up. So take advantage of this, people. If you are one of those, like Trevor said, that's been on the fence, don't know if I want to join it, maybe I do, maybe I don't, you seriously have to take advantage of this because it's 1 month. If you absolutely hate it, then you've lost $1.
$1. A single dollar.
If you absolutely love it, but maybe you can't afford it just yet, then you've at least tried it and you know what it's all about and you can get a good feel for it. And that 1 month, I mean, 1 month is a decently good time to try something out that is this cool. Anyways, if you're already a member of iRacing, you cannot use this. And if your account expired and you're a member, can't use this. It cannot be combined with any other offers, and the promo code to use this. Basically, all you got to do is go to iRacing.com membership and start signing up, and the promotion code is quiet please on the floor. PR1 as in ONE dollar 1 month. So now I will spell it out for you. PRONEDOLLARONEMONTH. So use that promotion code, get your $1 payment submitted, and once you enter that promotion code in the box where you'll see it says enter your promo code, then hit go, complete all the checkout process, and then you are good to go. If you have any problems, contact iRacing at support@iRacing.com. And, oh, by the way, refer Trevor and I. Except I don't think you can on a 1 month. Never mind. Don't refer us.
No, I think they can, but we don't actually get paid unless they sign up for a longer. I'm actually not sure.
I think it's 3 or more month.
Right.
And we get paid.
Anyway,
we're gonna make our money. But anyway, so
if there's a box,
that you can refer us.
Yeah, put it. If there's a box to put an email in, put it in. If not, well then don't.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, when I saw actually, derp. I don't know how I saw about this. I know how. It came in my bloody email. And
yes,
I actually looked at the email, looked at the code, and this is how good of a deal that I thought this was that I was confused at first. I actually thought initially before I tweeted it out, to make sure everybody knew about it, that it was either A, a mistake, or B, a scam email. So I actually went to the actual iRacing site, clicked on sign up, went through the process to the point where I put my promotion code in, put the code in, and made sure it really did come out as $1 before I actually tweeted it out. And it is actually legitimate. Like that's how skeptical I was that this was actually a legitimate deal, was not just some sort of error or something. But it is legitimate.
Error?
Error.
I like that.
I can attest that it is 100% valid. So
Yes, it is.
I mean, like, literally, in my Steam library, I could probably count. I would probably need more than 2 hands to count the number of games that I purchased for $1 and have never played because they were on sale. And I said, hey, it's only $1.
That's $1. So yes, give iRacing a try right now. Actually, great deal. Doesn't get much cheaper than this.
Nope. No, the only way that they could make it cheaper is they said, hey, I don't know, just sign up free for a month and make it a free to play game, you know, where it's like, okay, you can install the sim and you can, you know, join up and sign in and everything like that, but it'll cost you like $1 a lap, you know.
Wow.
Isn't that how free to play works? I don't know. I mean,
that seems expensive.
It costs you 2 if you have any incident points during the lap, actually, as well. So that's, you know.
Ooh. And then it costs the owner $10 per incident.
See, go back to what Nim was talking about, man. I still say that would be a really cool feature to implement into, even if it was a sister company, a side business, because man, that would be so cool.
That would be interesting. So, moving right along, another big news item popped out this week, and it involves a certain rather large racetrack that is coming out in December, which will be in the Season 4 build just before Christmas. So, yay, Christmas time, present, big track, go fast. And that, of course, and they also released, by the way, a video, which is about 10 minutes long, or give or take, and basically talks about the Nürburgring.
And the Nordschleife.
Yeah. Yes. And it is coming out, as I said, in December. So a couple of exciting things there. Really cool video to watch. And, I don't know, we're going to have the track in December.
Yeah, that's like 2 months away. Christmas. 2 months away.
Yes.
But,
so, yeah, and all the people danced in the street.
If you haven't gone and checked out that video yet, we'll obviously put a link in the show notes, but it's easy enough to go to iRacing's YouTube channel and find it pretty easily. But it is, man, it is super duper cool. Like, I mean, it was, we showed the previous video where they actually, you know, had, when they were over for the Sim Racing Expo, and, you know, showed that off-screen footage of how far they'd come along and going through it. This one gets right into the sim, and it shows just the level of detail, and they talk to a couple of guys who are very familiar with the track, and they show some of the stuff that they went through in order to make sure that they were getting everything authentic, you know, including, you know, sitting in the car and having a guy drive them around and say, okay, you know, here you see where the pavement changes color. This is where most people use as their braking point, and, you know, see those 2 signs. That's important here, and you know, like, that's the level of commitment they went into to make sure that they had this thing 100% authentic. So it's a very cool video to watch, to actually kind of get that peek into how important it was for them, how seriously they took getting this to be the most authentic version of this track. Well, you know, 2 tracks, sort of, into a sim, you know, into a sim racing product on, you know, on the PC or wherever. And it really sounds like this is going to be, you know, short of flying there, you know, or living close to it, this is going to be the way to experience that track. So I am really super excited for this.
Yes, absolutely. It looks, as Trevor said, fantastic.
Fantastic.
And I'm sure it'll be a very popular hit amongst the community.
Oh, yeah. Man, imagine what the hosted page is going to look like the next day.
There's just so much Nürburgring.
It'll be like just nothing but like Nürburgring, and there'll be like one Talladega. You know, must have Mike.
And there'll be like one car in there. The Talladega draft party by myself and Nürburgring. One last news item, which is not really a news item, but it's kind of a cool news item in my life. See what I did there? Um, you didn't laugh. You didn't find that funny?
Oh, well, I smiled. I mean, I know that doesn't play
Oh,
well on the
well,
audio,
that
but
doesn't really count because I can't see you.
I know. And neither can the people listening on iTunes or through their iPods, so it doesn't really help.
That's
Well,
true.
I'm doing that voice again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please stop.
I can't.
Chris, and I'm believing that I'm pronouncing this correctly, Molinari, is a brand new member to the iRacing community. So, first of all, welcome.
Yay. You now have more
And
stuff.
yeah, well, congratulations, you have more stuff. And not only that, and the only reason why this is super important in my mind is that he referred me. So I appreciate that because now I think I'm tied with Trevor on referrals, maybe.
Oh, I didn't know we actually had a scorecard going on this one yet.
Yes, we did. I've got this big tablet hanging on my wall over here. I'm just kidding. Um, anyways, so welcome, Chris, and I'm glad that you decided to sign up. And what does that bring it up to, like at least 5 that we know of people who started listening to our show before they joined us then?
Yeah, I mean, that may not sound like much, but when you think about it, I mean, when we started this, I mean, when I started the original podcast and, and then moved into this show with Chad, I mean, in my mind, I never thought anybody would find the show and listen to it unless they were already a member of the iRacing community. That was my thought. I mean, like,
Yeah.
why would you find this if you were not? But, I should have known better when you think about it because, I mean, as a lifelong gamer myself, there is plenty of times when I will be looking into a game and I will seek out as much information as I can on it. And some of that times, it's a podcast. So, you know what, I guess it shouldn't surprise me. But that is excellent. I am glad that we have found a way to bridge the gap and say, hey, come and try this thing over here. Because you know what? Life's a little bit different in iRacing when it comes to sim racing, and we kind of like it over here.
We big fans.
We are. Not fanboys, no, because if iRacing does something stupid, we will tell you that too. Don't kid yourself. But we are fans of the product.
It's the dumbest thing ever. They make us pay $1 to sign up.
Man, when I signed up, man.
When I signed up, I had to pay $5. It's crazy.
Actually, I think the very first time I signed up, I believe I paid $20, and that was like the first month before it was even out. Like I think their first subscription model. I think it was $20 I paid the very first time, but I could be wrong on that.
Because the very first time that I paid was a 3 for the price of 1 deal. I got 3 months, but I only paid for 1, and the other 2 were free. So, but I still had to pay $30, essentially for 1 month, even though I got 2 for free. So, but it was, yeah. So I mean, $1. Come on.
Well, hold on. Let me check here.
Oh.
I can actually go back. No,
Yeah, account history.
Account history. Well, let's see this.
Billing history.
That didn't work at all because I went back to page 100 and it took me. And none of this is in order, so that's not helping at all.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so that completes the news segment, and I don't know. There wasn't much going on this week, but hey, sometimes that's good.
Well, I mean, not every week can be a week of, hey, look at all the stuff that's going on. I mean, but I can tell you that in 2012 I bought twin rig Motegi. I didn't realize that I'd been part of the service that long.
Yeah, been out there for a while. So let's kick off the experiences segment, and I will start because basically what's going to happen is we're going to take a trip around the world.
Trip around the world!
And in the middle segment, we're going to have a fight, and then we're going to become friends again. So I will kick things off with a brief summary of the Bathurst 1000, which was last weekend, of course. And congratulations to everybody who finished, and more importantly, maybe won in their splits.
And actually, more importantly, I was right. It was $20. It was Apparently, August the 7th, 2008 was when I first got my subscription to iRacing, and it cost me $20.
Wow, really? What does that have to do with Bathurst?
Nothing, but I like
We have
talking
moved
to.
on from that.
Well, I was still looking, and I was excited that I found it.
Congratulations. You get a cookie.
Yay, cookie.
Okay, anyways, was that what you were going to say?
That was it. Yep, that was it. Please continue
Okay.
with Bathurst.
All right, thank you. So Bathurst last weekend, and as I mentioned on last week's show, it was me and Roy and Adam and Brenton. And most importantly, out of all of this was me and Brenton. And I will quickly bring this story up because, like, at least 3 months ago, maybe even longer than that, Brenton, who's a listener of the show, had emailed me, or actually I think it was a private message on Twitter, and basically just asked me if I would participate in Bathurst 1000 with him. At the time, we weren't really sure if it was a team event or not, and actually it didn't become clear until like a month ago that it was a team event. But so anyways, I was excited to be able to get to do this with Brenton because, like, I don't know, we planned it for a really long time. So we didn't qualify for our race. We did what was my time? Friday night. It was like the middle of the day for Brenton and Roy. And so Adam and I were going to run the first few splits, and because it was late for us, but going to be really late for us if we had stayed up and done the end of the race. So I ended up starting the race, and if I didn't say this, we didn't qualify. And we gridded ninth in our split. We were in split 2. On Friday night, there were 2 splits. Couldn't tell you what happened on Saturday, so far as splits go. But so I gridded the car and did the first stint, and I quickly found myself in 5th, and then just kept making progress. Got all the way up to 3rd. And that's where I ran for most of my first stint until towards the end there, where somebody that was really quick caught me, and I basically just let him go and went back to 4th. And that's where I finished out my first stint. And it was a good first stint. And I felt the interesting thing is that, and I told Brenton this and everybody else too, but I actually, because of my weird situation right now with internet and house and my sim rig being across town, is the fact that I didn't really get a chance to practice. But the good thing is that back in like January or February, somewhere in there, I had run a V8 race at Bathurst when I was running the V8 car full time. So I had the experience, but it had been a while. But for some really odd reason, as soon as I started practicing for the race, it was like I had never left. And I just kind of picked it right back up, like I said, as if I had never left.
Which is weird because, I mean, like the V8 car is a pretty powerful car. I mean, and that course, as we have mentioned previously, is a super challenging course. I mean, between its layout and the elevation changes and the fact that the walls are like, it's like, oh, great, if you go here, you'll hit the apex of this corner. You're off by an inch too far into the apex, and you're smacking the wall instead. So, I mean, it's not exactly a course that you can just say, oh, I'll just wing it.
Pretty much. But for some reason, I was just like immediately back into a rhythm, and I will say that I wasn't as fast so far as lap times go as I was when I did the first race there. For some reason, I could never run a 12. And the first time I was there, I could run a minute 12. I don't know if I actually did in the race, but I could still do them, like in practicing and stuff. But this trip around, I like never went to. I think I got like a 113, like 04. And I was like knocking on the door of 12, but I could never do it. Which, I mean, still, yeah, running 13s is not terrible, but it's not great either. So my first stint was really good, as I was kind of mentioning, being 3rd, 4th. I kept it clean, didn't hit anything, didn't spin, didn't have really, I think there was really only one moment where I kind of had a slight heart attack, and that's because I so for those of you that haven't raced, you come down the mountain and it's all squirrely and you're
She'll be
basically
coming round the
hold your breath.
mountain when she comes.
And you go all the way down that big long hill, and then you take that right-hander, and then you kind of have a heavy I can't even talk now, a heavy braking zone, and then you have the left-handed turn there. And that heavy braking zone and then the left-handed turn part where you downshift from sixth gear, I believe, or at least I was going from sixth to second. I have those add-on shifters for the sequential part of the Driving Force GT, like Trevor does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one that I used to downshift just decided to stop working.
Oh, dear.
So basically, in the middle of me trying to downshift the car, I, excuse me, I couldn't shift anymore. So I was like stuck in fourth or something like that, and basically had to just slow the car down. And when that happened, it kind of messed me up mentally, and I was kind of like, oh, well, now what do I do? So I basically just kept slowing the car down. There was somebody behind me. They weren't like right behind me, but they were close. And so I didn't want them to like suddenly run over me. And obviously I didn't want to run off the track. So I like slowed way, 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 way down in fourth gear, which then didn't allow me to get up to speed once it was time to go back up to speed. So that guy passed me, and I had to like quickly react to the situation and manage to sort of temporarily fix my problem. So like for the last couple laps, I basically drove without the add-on gear puncher thing and just used the actual gear shifter that's attached to the steering wheel while squeezing my finger in between the two.
Yeah, which
so
wouldn't.
that
Yeah, I
was
mean,
fun.
yeah, you think about it. I mean, it's not like those aren't accessible, but
Yeah.
I mean, to have it all. Well, one, the muscle memory, where it's at, and then having your upshift, out here, out to the side of the wheel, and then your fingers jammed. Yeah, that could throw you. I could see that.
Yeah. So that was a fun moment. That was probably, in all honesty, like the scariest part of. I ran 2 stints. That was probably the scariest part of my entire night, which is good because it wasn't all that bad. I then came in and gave the car over to Adam. Now here's something that I would like to point out. I've not known Adam for very long, but I mean he's a pretty good driver. Seen him drive different things. He's obviously been in the endurance races with us. But Adam, literally, at the time that we were doing the race, had only owned the V8 car
Oh,
for
boy.
24 hours. And he had been around Bathurst at least in different cars. There's one car, he had actually won a race there in some car, I think, but I forget the car now. But here's the thing. If you've never driven the V8 car, I don't know what is the most difficult car on the sim. I'm sure everybody's opinions vary and all
F
that stuff,
F1
but
car,
you
F1
almost
car,
have to
F1
put the
car,
V8 car in the top 5
F1 car.
most difficult cars on the simulation to drive. And then you put it on Bathurst, which is as Trevor said, difficult combination.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what Adam was thinking. I mean, the guy was like, let's just do the hardest thing ever. I don't need practice.
I just bought this car thingy. I don't know. We'll be fine.
Yeah. And actually, in all honesty, and I'm only kind of picking at him, but in all honesty, he did really great. I was most impressed with him out of everybody because, I mean, the dude just bought the car. He did make contact with the wall at one point, which he didn't spin or anything. He just kind of made contact, and I don't even think it actually gave us any damage. I think he got some incident points, but I don't think it actually really hurt our car. I think he said the steering was a little off, but it wasn't too bad. And then I got back in the car after him, and I didn't really feel a difference. He also had 2 other moments where he like sort of spun, but stopped the car enough that he didn't really spin. And then maybe like one little off track here or there. where like just like one side of the car went off the track or something. It was just like little silly stuff. So basically, his entire stint, which was about 26 laps or so, was pretty much clean. I mean, he slight contact, little half spin here, a little half spin there. I think he ended up with 3 incident points.
Nice.
Which, I mean, again, that's impressive to me. To go through that only owning the car for 24 hours. Because, I mean, I didn't pick up the V8 car that fast when, I first started driving it. So, anyways, Adams, I think when I handed the car off to Adam, I was in 4th. And when he finished and then gave it back to me, we were in 6th at that point, I believe. And for the longest time, 6th was actually the worst that we were throughout the race. So I came back out, ran my second stint, which was my last, and did really well again. Didn't have any problems, didn't have any issues, kept the car clean. And the thing that I'm most excited about out of the entire race, and it is totally an individual accomplishment that I will brag about to the end of the days, is that if you watch the stream from my first venture around the mountain in the V8 car, which is on my YouTube channel from earlier this year, whenever that was, if you watch that whole race, you will notice that I finished I think that one was 34 laps. I finished with 1 incident point, which was stupid because I'd either passed someone or was letting someone go and just barely ran off the road where there should not have been grass anyways because the wall's right there. And it gave me a 1X. I was so mad about that. I mean mad. Because I had driven one of the most difficult tracks in a difficult car with 0 incidents and got a 1X because I ran off the road, quote unquote. And I was looking for revenge. So this race in the Bathurst 1000, I completed 51 laps, which ended up being the most on the team because I'll get to that in a minute. So I ran 51 laps last Friday night. And finished with 0 incident races, or ink, rather, not races. So I was most excited about that and was like, aha, take that, Bathurst.
Aha, I showed you.
Yes. So that was payback from earlier in the year. I was most excited about that. Before I continue on about a race, I had a blast. And it's not just because of 0 incident race. I love the V8 car. It's one of my favorite cars. And I actually told Brenton and all of them that afterwards, once I get my sim rig over to my house, get my internet situation going, sometime next year, whenever that is, I'm going to go back and race that car again because it is easily in my top 2 favorite cars to drive. I really enjoy it. So, and I had a fun time racing at Bathurst. Despite it being hard, it's still a very fun combination. And I know that we kept saying we were surprised. Everybody was like, oh, Bathurst is my favorite track. But, I can see how you guys pick it as your favorite track, for sure. So the rest of the race, after I was done, Brenton got in, who's our V8 expert. And he did really well. I didn't watch his stint because I ended up leaving because it was getting late in the night for me. But I think he had like one little spin and maybe a slight off, but he still had a good solid stint. And then apparently his internet died towards the end of his stint, I believe. And so at this point, after his stint was supposed to be over with, Roy was supposed to take over. Well, apparently Roy's computer died.
Oh, dear.
So we basically had nobody to drive the car. Now, Adam and I have already gone to bed because it's really late in our time zone. The only person who was then in our team speak to drive the car, who wasn't really scheduled to drive the car and was more so like a cheerleader or a crew chief, I guess, if you will, on the sidelines there, was Dean Mole, who had originally wanted to race and had kind of almost decided to, and then he decided not to because he didn't really get a chance to practice because he was basically in the same boat as Adam, although I think Dean had already owned the car, but he had never really had experience, to my knowledge anyways, in the V8. So Dean took over the car. Unannounced, basically, or
It's like,
unexpectedly.
hey, you hanging out over there on the other side of the garage. Yeah, you want to get in this car? Because nobody else can, so...
Yes. So Dean jumps in, and I wasn't there, so I didn't really see it all. But based of my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, he ran a couple of laps at a very slow pace, trying to kind of get himself into like no man's land where nobody was around him, and he could just kind of ease his way into the situation. And at that point, he was letting a couple of cars go by. We were still in sixth at this point. And one car got by just fine. The next car started going by just fine. And Dean had even announced or put in the text chat anyways, pass left. Because, Dean, I mean, you can see in the video that Dean posted on Twitter of this that he's going slow compared to these people so that he can get in his own little world. And the second car, apparently when they shifted or really put the full throttle down or whatever it was that happened, it launched their car into a spin, and they spun perfectly into the side of Dean and our car, and poor Dean went flipping down the mountain.
Yeah.
It's not funny, but it kind of is. And that kind of killed our whole race.
Yeah, that must have scared the crap out of him, man, because like the force of that impact, I mean, and he was like, could not have been more out of the way, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, I have planned this perfectly. I am in nobody's way. Bam! Now I'm rolling. Do a barrel roll.
Oh, over and over and over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
So poor Dean. I mean, and that's why I'm laughing, and it's not funny, but it is if you watch the video, because it's like he's going so slow, and it's like pass left, bang, flip, 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 flip.
It's like pass left. No.
I will not pass left. I will run right into you. So anyways, the guy just lost control, and I guess he apologized. Anyways, that put us really far behind, and Dean ended up driving the rest of the way. Again, not expecting to, but he kind of had to because there was nobody else to. Dean's our go-to guy when everybody else is gone. He ran like the last 6 hours of the 24 hours of Spa, and now he's like taking over the V8 car. And I don't know how many laps it was, but I think it was from like lap 120 to 161 or whatever it was that he did, which is quite a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Dean is an example of like the dream that we all have, where it's like, I don't know, if I just kind of hang out off in the background, then I'm just going to get, because he wasn't supposed to race that last bit of the thing, and then I can't remember who it was who had the problem, just jumped in the car and raced a bunch, and now he's sitting out just spectating the V8 race, and all of a sudden everything goes wrong, he hops in the car. I mean, like, that's what we all want. It's like, I don't know, maybe if I hang out in the pits long enough, somebody will say, hey kid, you want to ride?
You look like somebody that wants to drive. So in the end, we unfortunately finished 12th. I think the rest of Dean's stint went pretty well, except for that, and maybe a couple of little off tracks and stuff. Because again, still learning, like Adam. But still, between the two, him and Adam, that is, between the two of them, pretty impressive for their first trip. Around the big mountain in the V8 car. Anyways, and it was disappointing to finish 12th because we had a top 6 pretty much locked up because we were pretty quick. But anyways, is what it is. And the next day they did it again, and I think we're actually leading the race between Roy, Dean, and Brenton. I didn't race that one, nor did Adam. It was just Breen, which is a combination of Dean and Brenton, for the record, and Roy. The three of them did it again on Saturday, the next race, and they were apparently leading the race, and then Roy decided that he didn't want the team to win, so he just wrecked it. And they finished 14th.
I'm bored.
I tried to make that funny because Roy felt really bad. So, anyway, apparently he was almost pitting too. That's what makes it even worse for him, I'm sure. He was like a lap away from handing it over to Brenton or something and then hit the wall. And they finished 14th. So it was a lot of good racing followed by some very disappointing finishes for us and the Bathurst. But it was still a blast. And we finished, I think, both races. Well, actually, I don't know if they finished the other one because apparently the engine blew. So I don't know if they actually finished that one.
Oh, poor Roy. Yeah, he's just confirmed in the chat that he was on his last lap before handing it over when that happened. So.
Yes. Poor Roy.
Well.
So anyways, that was Bathurst.
That was a lot of Bathurst.
Yes. It was fun. You should have been there. It really was fun.
If you're going to do Bathurst, just do all of the Bathurst. It's like, what are you doing this weekend? Bathurst. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to take a bath.
All weekend long. Yeah.
Exactly. I didn't know where to go with that, so thank you for filling in.
So, back over into North America, there were other races that were happening over this past week. I believe we shall start with, let's say, Montreal, and
yes.
carry on from there. Montreal, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, was where the iRacing.com IndyCar Winter Series was racing not this current week, but the week before this, because this week we were at Pocono. So last week we were at Montreal, and I did some practicing for it, and I was actually feeling pretty confident with how with how it was doing on the track. Things were feeling, pretty decent. It's a challenging track. But this track really, for me, in my IndyCar experiences, and of course, I'm not a big car guy, like I've mentioned before, where I'm not very good at getting a feel for the car and the setup changes and stuff like that. But this race right here really spelled out to me, at least, the differences when it comes to track temperature and how it affects the car. Mm-hmm. Because I did a lot of practicing in one condition. One type of weather condition with a reasonably cool temperature, which would have been, accurate for Montreal this time of year. And, was doing pretty decent race, lap times, like from the super, super fast guys. I was only like 3 seconds off on my best lap from where they were hitting at their top. So for the guys, kind of where I'm at with my speed, I was feeling like I could have been pretty competitive. And then you get to race day, and here's, I will mention this, and this happened twice, where I think iRacing needs to make an adjustment to the way that the attached practice to race works. Because when, as new listeners might not know, or new users might not know, and people who've been around will know that when you actually jump into a race session now, it'll automatically put you into practice session, so you can practice. Then it'll jump you over to your race, so you can practice and not worry about missing your race. So that's how I've been doing a lot of these races. I'll jump in and practice for a half hour, whatever it is. Like I've practiced during the week, but just that little bit of getting into my groove, getting my rhythm going, kind of thing. And the track was, again, cool. My setup was fine for that. And again, I'm not really good at at just changing based on instant conditions. So I practice and I'm hitting those speeds where I was before. And then the race session starts up, and it's like 25, 30 degrees hotter than it was in that practice session. And now all of a sudden my setup just feels ridiculous. Like it's super, super loose. There's no grip. And when that session starts up, it's like, all right, 10-minute qualifying, go, and then you're into the race. Like there's no time to actually try to practice and set up the to change the car and get used to it, I mean, I guess, the experts or the people who are more familiar with this car will say, oh, okay, it's hotter, adjust, boom, away we go. Or they'll have a, hot weather setup and a cold weather setup or something like that. For me to jump, it's like, okay, practice, got my rhythm on. Oh, crap. Now what do I do? And I was like 4 seconds slower than I was in practice. So I think iRacing needs to make an adjustment. If they're going to attach a practice session to a race, make it so that, and they're not really attaching, but they're putting you into one before the race. Somehow do something in the programming so it's going to be at least comparable weather conditions. A few degrees or whatever, doesn't have to be exact, but close. Like 30 degrees is not close. That's not, okay, great practice, put the car in, pull the car out onto the grid so you can go qualify. Oh dear, it's gone up by 30 degrees. Guess we'd better get to the wrenches now. Like, that's not how the real world works. But
no.
So
West Montreal's different. I haven't seen any 30-degree swings lately.
But it was yeah. So anyway, I got out in the race. I did qualify. As per my instructions and egging on by various people. I am not allowed to not qualify for races anymore because that's just a chicken way to try to win a division.
Who may or may not have wrecked a Bathurst.
Well, it's apparently the new rule. The new rule is apparently I'm not allowed to Ryan Newman this championship. So that is my standby. I know I used that last week, but I'm going to stick by it because it is accurate. So yes. I did go out and I did qualify, and I actually qualified in 9th position. And my heart was just pounding, getting into this race.
Well, that's a good thing.
I'm serious. I was super duper nervous because you go the pace lap, the way they do it, which is smart, is real short. They basically start you on the backstretch, okay, turn, go. Which is great because it gets you into the race quicker, but you don't have time to kind of get the mental mind around what you're going to do, and then all of a sudden those first couple corners are really sharp, and there's not a lot of room, and it's real skinny, and but everybody went through there nice and smooth, and everybody found their own kind of little space, and nobody was making any dive bombs, and we actually got away nice and clean, at least up towards the front of the pack. So ended up just kind of getting into a groove, and it was okay. I was slower than I knew I could be based on the weather conditions, but, it was fine. And then got about 12 laps in, was kind of playing with my braking points, seeing if I could, change them slightly, whatever. Went into the hairpin, and something happened. I swear, I'm looking at... I even looked at the telemetry afterwards. I took the black box out of the car and took it back to the shop and looked at it. It's like, I don't think I did anything different on that turn. But somehow, when I was braking into that turn, I guess one wheel just kind of decided to grab, or I pushed the brakes a little bit harder than normal maybe, and it locked up slightly, and the car just went, whoo, left and into the wall and just kind of killed the car. So I ended up limping it back, on the hopes that they could fix it, even though I knew they couldn't, because this isn't a stock car. I had bent the suspension rods up real good. I'm pretty sure one was poking into my leg. But I limped her back, and they, you're all done. It's like, oh, okay. And ended up finishing in 20th position.
And by the way, you might want to go have your leg have surgery on it.
What? Because I have a push rod through it?
Yes. Just throwing that out there. It's up to you.
It's a personal call, man, but
Yeah. If you want us to call an ambulance, we can.
So, I was disappointed at that point in time because the way that race had ended up. And so I decided, okay, normally I do the one race on the Thursday, and that's all I've done so far. But it's like, you know what, I'm going to get another slot in here and, beg, borrow, and steal, whatever, with the family. It's like, okay, I need this hour and a half time frame on Saturday afternoon so I can go race this again because I know I can do better. And, I'm running for a championship, and 16th championship points is not good enough. So I sat down Saturday and said, I tweeted out earlier, hey, I'm going to be racing this race in case you want to watch, and jumped in. Same thing, weather, cold to stiflingly hot, got me off my, off guard to begin with. And before I got into the race, Chad tweets me and says, hey, yeah, you might have a friend in there. I was thinking, it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe Roy's coming in, or, a Dean or somebody like that and whatnot. It's like, all right, okay, cool. So I jump on and get all my streaming stuff set up, and Chad jumps in and said, jump into TeamSpeak. So I jump into TeamSpeak, and there's Chad. And Chad says, all right, I haven't done any practice. I don't know what, I haven't really raced this car a lot yet, but I figured it's Saturday afternoon. Let's have some fun. I'm going to jump in the race with you. It's like, oh, goody. Okay. Hopefully, and my initial thought, well, hopefully you're nowhere near me because you haven't practiced and I don't need that sort of stress in my life. But, so I qualified for that race and kind of didn't have nearly as good of a qualifying lap as I had in my previous race. The weather difference in this one was a lot more than the previous one. So I ended up qualifying in 16th position, so a little bit back in the pack. Well, a fair bit back in the pack. So that race, and Chad qualified a little bit further up in the line, which already it's like, really? He's all like, I don't know. I don't know what's good or bad because of the weather. Whatever. I just drive the car.
Okay, now for the record, the practice session, to go along with Trevor's point, the practice session that I jumped in and I ran 10 laps in, so I did have 10 laps of practice, was, I don't remember what the temperature was, but it was cool, and there was a lot of grip. And the lap time that I ran in that practice session was 1:22. The qualifying time that I laid down in the stifling hot, as Trevor put it, qualifying session / race session was 1:25. So a 3-second difference in weather right there, because I basically ran the same lap, so far as hit my marks and everything. So yeah, big deal. And I started 6th. So I agree with Trevor. They've got to somehow coordinate it to where it's a little bit closer, because think about people like in my situation, and I'm more of an experienced driver, so I'm probably not the best example to use, but like if somebody in my shoes, so far as this race went, jumped in and said, hey, this looks fun, I'll practice for a few minutes and then go race, like that's going to totally throw them off. Like I almost halfway expected the weather to be different, and there wasn't anything I could do because I don't know what the heck to do with setup. So it was basically just like, well, I'm running what I brung. But for someone else that may not be as experienced, throwing them from a 50-degree weather track to a 85-degree weather track, that's in Fahrenheit, is like, that's not good at all for anybody.
No, and like I said, for people who are going to set up cars beforehand or are not really good, are not experts at it, or, just grab a default, set up and,
yeah,
that bad, because, it really, really does affect the car. And this track seemed, like I said, I've, that was week 5, so I've raced 5 races on, roads and ovals, and that was by far the biggest change I'd noticed in the grip level when it came to the temperature. So for my part for the race, the first bit of the race was, I'm trying to think back to it now. I know how it all kind of ended out, but I don't think there was a lot of really memorable stuff that happened. It was, I kind of found my groove. I was sitting there back in high teens kind of thing for a bit, and then kind of started moving up a little bit into the field. I think I may have been in the top 10 at some point in time for a while, and had a couple close calls with some guys. I don't think, as I recall, I had a couple offs as well, and the higher temperatures, because the lack of grip, did cost me some incident points for sure, because there was a couple times, if you watch the stream, there's a couple times like I just yelling to the mic. It's like, why can't I make this turn anymore? It's one of the chicanes, and there's several, like there's like 3 chicanes that are really similar to each other. But for some reason, there's this one particular one that I kept offshooting. Thankfully, there's a nice, a big overrun area there, so I wasn't damaging the car. But it's off track, and I'm getting a 1x each time I'm doing it, and had to slow down. And a lot of times I did it when there's people around me, so now lose a position because, well, I have to slow down. Although I'm really thankful for that new feature where it actually gives you a countdown of how long you have to slow down for. Now that I don't get those flags cleared by default, if you remember me mentioning the in the past, it used to be I would get a course cutting penalty when I was starting out road racing, and I would just keep racing anyway, and I was slow enough that it would just go away eventually. Now that I'm actually fast enough, I actually have to yield to those. So I guess that's a plus. I actually have to pay attention to the penalty flags. They don't just go away on their own, because it's like they're all like, all right, you need to you're good. Just go. This is the way it used to be. Excuse me. So, pretty, other than a bunch of offs, fairly uneventful race. I mean, I had some guys have some interesting offs around me. I guess there's not much really to talk about until close to the end. So I guess I'll let, if anything you want to mention leading up to kind of the last few laps of that race.
Yeah, so for me, it was kind of the same. I had a couple of moments at the beginning of the race, and you actually hear me talk about this. I'm going to talk about it differently right now than I did on the stream, for Trevor's stream. I wasn't streaming. But I kind of had a couple of moments where I felt like, even though I was a rookie in what I was doing, for the full disclosure, and this is part of why Trevor hates me, I had never driven the IndyCar on a road course until this moment. Like, not the race itself, but like 30 minutes to 45 minutes before that race was the first time I'd ever driven the IndyCar on a road course. But also, in full disclosure, I have driven a lot of stuff at Montreal. And I've also driven the IndyCar on a lot of different ovals. So I do know some things about the IndyCar and how it drives, and I know how Montreal drives. And Montreal is one of my better road courses, so far as, having a feel for it and everything. And so it was kind of the perfect setup for me to join. And when Trevor sent out the tweet about, I'm going to be racing it, that's kind of what inspired me to do it, because it was like, I really want to do a race in the IndyCar series with Trevor, because he's having a lot of fun. He's talking about it on the show, and I kind of like to do it with him. And I would prefer to do the road ones because I like the road racing, I think, better. And it just kind of worked out that I happened to be there and I had actually just finished practicing for my Phoenix race, which I'll get to in a minute. And it just kind of worked out to where I could do it. So anyways, back to the race. I had a couple of moments where, like I said, even though I was a rookie in what I was doing, where I felt like a veteran. And it's not because I'm not saying like I'm a veteran in the car or anything. I was just a veteran in the way that I was driving, because there were a couple of guys at the very start of the race, or who were around me, who were being very aggressive. And one guy even dive bombed me going into one of the chicanes. And I mean, he was like 3 car lengths behind me, and I started slowing down for the turn right as I started to turn to the left to make the turn, the apex and everything. Car left. I'm like, what? Wait, what? Why? Where? How?
What? Why?
So I mean, he came out of nowhere, and I'm always kind of tentative when I'm around people, because they might try to pull that. But, I mean, really? Well, that guy's important, because I mentioned on Trevor's stream, I said something along the lines of, okay, now we're dive bombing people, something like that, sarcastically. Yep. And I don't remember if I said anything else about it on the stream, but in my mind, I was thinking that person reminds me of exactly the type of thing that I'm used to seeing where people drive really aggressive at the beginning of a race or right after a restart if it's an oval race, and they end up being the guy who causes the next caution on an oval race or who spins, in the next turn on a road race. And I literally had that thought of that guy's going to spin because he was just being so aggressive. And in my beginning of my race, I had kind of paced myself for several reasons. Number one, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I didn't want to be ruining anyone's race, especially in something that I've not really been in, because then I'm going to feel like, well, I'm such an idiot for doing something that I should have never have done, and I was only really there for the fun of it. And so that guy passed me, and then there was another guy who came up like a lap or two later. And he didn't dive bomb me or anything, but he was being aggressive. Then he passed me, and I let him go. He caught me at a good place to pass me, so I let him go. And then he caught the guy who was in front of me, who was a little bit slower than me, but I hadn't really had a chance to pass him yet because I've been getting past myself. And the second guy, not the one that dive bombed me, but the second guy was just kind of wiggly all over the track. It's like, hey, I'm going to take this part of the track, and then I'm going to go over there, and then I'm going to come back here. And it was like, okay, can we just like stay in one spot, while we're trying to pass people? And again, I had the next thought of that guy's probably going to wreck. Within 2 laps, both of them wrecked. And I don't even know where the heck they finished, but they were way back there. So basically, rookie tip for you. If you're driving something you've never driven before like I was, or if you're really experienced like willpower, don't be aggressive in the first few laps because it's going to hurt you eventually. Just be patient, remain calm, take your time. I know it's only a 34-lap race, but it's like, you got time. It's a big track. You don't have to pass everybody in one lap. That's my point. Do you agree?
Yeah, and from the flip side of that, if you're on the other side of that, just let them go because you know what? You see what they're doing. If you back off, that's where the Trevor method of racing comes in, where it's like, you know what? I'm just going to let that guy go because I don't like what's happening. I don't think he has, I don't think he has spatial awareness around him that if, I get beside him in a corner, I don't think he's going to be aware enough to know that I'm there and give me room, or or the simple fact of, what, I'll just wait. I'll pass. You pass me now. I'll pass you again when you're in the grass later. So
exactly, which is why I said I felt like a veteran, because that's what I did. I was just like, yep. I mean, the guy dive bombed me. I didn't really let him go because it was like, okay, you're passing me now. But the second guy I let go, and it was like, I knew as soon as they passed me. I was like, yeah, I'll be passing them here in a minute. So, but other than that, I just wanted to mention that as kind of a rookie tip. But other than that, the first part of my race was kind of uneventful. I basically stayed in 6th. I think at one point I got up to 5th, but I was basically in 6th. Did the green flag pit stop, and this was one of those things I didn't know. I kept asking Trevor, so we're only going to make one pit stop, right? We've only got to do this once. And yeah, I had all my buttons set up. I even had to ask Trevor one time how many push to passes we got because I didn't know. And then Trevor pointed out that it's actually on your steering wheel. And I was like, oh, well, that's handy. I didn't notice that until he told me. But anyways, came out of that green flag pit stop. And yeah, I mentioned to you guys I don't run the F3 box, don't run the F1 box. That's something that you shouldn't do if you're new to the sim. But I don't run those. So I knew that I was in 6th before my pit stop, before everybody started pitting. And once everything cycled, I just happened to check the F1 box because there was a car that was right behind me who had not really been there before. And so I was kind of curious if he was a lap car or a lead lap car. And if he was a lead lap car, then obviously I would have been racing him for position. Wow.
Position, bye.
Position. Okay. So I was trying to figure out, if I was racing him or not. So I flipped to F1 box, and sure enough, I was racing him. But at the same time, I discovered that, and this has been a couple laps, after the pit stop, I discovered that I was now in second.
Mm.
I was like, how in the world did that even happen? Because I was in sixth. There's like all four of those people had to have wrecked because like I don't know how I got into second because I didn't pass anybody. I mean, at least like on the track. I mean, I guess I passed them in the pits, but I didn't pass anybody on the racetrack. I don't know how I got into second. I don't know if iRacing screwed up the scoring. I don't know what happened.
Somebody's
But I was in
transponder
second.
fell off.
Yes. It's somebody was out there not being scored. Anyway, so it put me in second. And then as soon as I noticed that, because I wasn't expecting it, I didn't think to check. So I got back to the next part of the track where there was a straightaway, and I thought, well, where's the leader? So I flipped to I think it was the F2 box, or the F3 rather, and tried to take a quick glance of where the leader was. And at the moment that I looked, he was exactly 10 seconds ahead of me. So I thought, oh, well, I'm really far behind. The guy in third was right on my bumper. So I was like, well, I'll just worry about the guy in third. So about 4 or 5 laps went by, and I was like secretly hoping that the guy in third would spin so I wouldn't have to be under pressure. Because I kind of wanted to let him go because he was faster than me. But at the same time, I was like, well, now I'm in second. I'm a real race car driver now. I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. I can hold this guy off. And so I secretly started hoping that he was spin so that I didn't have to actually work for it. Because, who wants to do that? And he actually ended up spinning. And so that made my life a lot easier. So be careful what you wish for. Anyways, so once that happened, I settled down into a nice, solid rhythm. And I took a couple times and would glance, and I'd look, and I'd be gaining on the leader. And then I'd glance again, and I'd gain even more. And then I'd glance again, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm 6 seconds. Now I'm 5 seconds behind. Now I'm 4. Now I'm 3. Now I'm 2. Now I'm 1.5 seconds behind the race leader. And I've just been hitting my marks, not really doing any fancy driving, just kind of hitting my marks. And then that's when the whole race changed, which is where Trevor left us off.
Yeah.
And the only thing I will say before I let you talk is that right before what happened when Trevor explains what happened, like I said, I was 1.5 seconds behind the leader. And after you cross the start-finish line, you go into that first left-hander, then you kind of go through that little short, sweeping right-hander, and first 2 turns there. And then you go into that first chicane. 3 and 4, I guess, is what they are. And I had hit that part. That chicane was probably the easiest chicane for me to hit out of the whole racetrack. And for whatever reason, when I went through on this particular lap that we're going to talk a lot about, I completely missed that chicane. But another veteran thing that happened to me, I didn't panic. I didn't freak out like, oh gosh, I'm going to mess up, because I knew if I panicked about it and locked up my brakes that I would spin and who knows what would happen. I might get hit by another car or whatever. And an important thing to note is that the third place car had started reeling me back in. So he was within about 2 seconds of me again after his little spin. And because, again, I think he was the fastest car on the racetrack, even though he wasn't leading. So I completely cut that chicane. And now I will stop and let Trevor pick back up.
Now, as before we actually got to that chicane, before actually we hit the start-finish line, I guess this is the time when, suddenly all of a sudden Chad and my stories combined, just, although I was about to get lapped. But, again, that was my own doing. That was from the offs and having to yield a couple times because of those. Like, I made my own bed. I wouldn't have been a lap down if I hadn't made several mistakes up to that point. So here I am. I'm in a battle with, I have a guy ahead of me that I'm fighting for position directly in front of me. I have a guy behind me who's also, I'm fighting for positions. There's 3 of us all side, nose to tail. We're on, we've been like that for a while. We're on the start finish straight, and the leader is approaching from the rear. Now I'm kind of gauging how this is happening. It's one of those situations where, if the leader comes up on me, I'm always very courteous and get out of the way. But now I'm in one of those spots where if I yield, I'm going to lose a spot because this guy, is going to be able to, if I slow down and get out of the way, this guy's going to have me. So I'm trying to gauge how am I, and this is, a couple laps moving up to this point. I'm trying to gauge how best to handle this situation because it's one of those things where I don't want to lose my position. I'm fighting for position with the guy ahead of me, the guy behind me, but I don't want to get in the way of the leader. Back of the mind, Chad's in second place. If you get in the way of the leader, maybe you'll slow him down a little bit. But, that was a tertiary thought. So
way to go, Trevor.
So it's one of those, it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And then, so in those situations, what I'll usually do is I'll usually kind of watch and observe the drivers and how they're driving. And the guy that I was racing behind he wasn't racing in a consistent fashion. Like he was kind of all over the place, and he was quick to make moves if it looked like I was getting close. So he didn't seem like the kind of guy who's going to move over or get out of the way of the leader. So it's like, okay, mental note number one. Then the guy behind me, I'm looking at him and the line he's taking with the leader getting really close to him, and it really doesn't look like he's getting ready to let the leader by either. So my spidey sense kind of went off at this point in time. It's like, you know what? I don't, and now we've actually reached that point where we're on the start-finish line. It's like, you know what? Coming into this group of corners, this really tight group of corners, looking at the way these guys are driving, I don't want to put myself in a bad spot. So I actually yielded that spot to the guy behind me and let the leader go by on that same stretch, just so that I was behind it as opposed to in the middle of it. Now this, Roy, this wasn't a confidence thing, the qualifying thing. This was a tactical decision based on what I was seeing out of these drivers. So we go through that first bit that Chad described, going into that chicane that Chad missed a second ago. We get through there, and here's what happens. And I had a pretty good view of it, and then I went back and looked at the replay later on. It is now person I'm fighting for position, then the leader, then the next person for position for me, then me. Is what happened. Is where we're at coming out of that first chicane onto a fairly long straight stretch before another right-left chicane.
And very high speed in the IndyCar.
Yes, very much so. So here's what happens: the leader gets a run and moves to I guess it's a straight stretch. So he moves to the left. I was going to say outside, inside, but that's not really relevant. Moves to the left of the car and to get around him. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, he's getting around him. Everything's squaring out. Now I can get back into battle mode until Chad comes behind me, and then I'll have to make another decision as to how this plays out. So then chaos happened. Because then all of a sudden, the leader turns basically straight left into the wall. I go as far right as I can. It's pretty skinny here. It's enough for, it's about 2 car widths wide there at the track, and that's about it. And there's not really a lot of runoff. So he kind of turns straight left into the wall, and then starts doing this barrel roll thing. I go as far right as I can, and then suddenly have the leaders, I can't remember if it was right or left. I don't know what part of the roll he was in at the time. But basically his tire kind of comes off my helmet. It's still attached to his car. And I kind of go into the wall and end up kind of sideways on the track. And I'm looking at relatives, looking for my path to get out. So I'm not going to pull in front of somebody. I'm going to stay still until I know I can pull out safely without impeding anybody else's race. So going back, and I guess I'll go back to the replay. Well, yeah, let's go back to what actually happened. What happened was the leader got onto the left of the car, as I had seen, and the guy he was passing did go off to the right, about as far as he could. He didn't let off, but he still got that other guy behind him going for position, so he shouldn't have let off. And there were still lots of straight stretch left. I mean, it was, I'm guessing his plan was to just short break the next corner, give the leader the corner, and not lose that, little bit of momentum. Or maybe just back off just the tiniest bit to give the leader the corner and not really lose position, is my guess. I can only guess what was going through the guy's head. So he's off to the right as far as he can. The leader goes to the left. And then the leader, for some reason, somehow thinks that physics and matter, and physical matter took a vacation, and that car is suddenly not going to be there anymore, and then just cuts down on him. Like, just straight up, just acts as if the car's not there. Like, he got a corner on him. I mean, he was not even nose to nose with him. Like, he was still a little bit behind him, and then just all of a sudden assumed that, I guess since I got position, this guy's going to brake or leave or whatnot. So he basically took himself out, and then cursed him out for it as well, because a silly lap car got in his way. And then, but we're looking at the situation. It's one of those things where, you know what, he was a lap car. Yes, you are the leader, correct. But
technically, he was a lap car. He was just being put a lap down.
True enough. But that guy also has like a car for position right on his bumper, and I'm not that far back from both of them. So that guy's still racing his race, gave the leader the room, but didn't stop for him. I mean, like, it's still, the guy was as courteous as he could be while defending his own position. He wasn't fighting going a lap down. At least, from what I could see, he wasn't fighting going a lap down. He was fighting to to lose as little speed as possible while letting the leader by, is what it seemed to me, looking at the replay. And the leader just flat out took himself out on him. Like, basically just said, "Hey, car, you look like a good thing to spin off of," whack, and then ended up killing my car because of it, because I couldn't avoid the wreck. So it was a messy situation.
And for the record, Trevor almost cleared it. He was so close to being out of that.
Like, if that guy had gotten more height off of his bounce, he would have sailed right over me. But there was literally nowhere for me to go. I mean, it was, all of a sudden it's like you're driving, track blocked. With a flying car. So anyway, so I will. I was just saying. I guess I will just finish off my bit of the race, and then we'll kind of back up and let Chad finish off his race there. As it was, I got damage, went out. There was only a few laps left, and it's like, you know what? Okay, I'll just take it nice and slow, and try to ease this thing around, which was a mistake. The damage on the car, like I was being real ginger on it, but I spun out a couple extra times because, obviously my front wing was really damaged. It wasn't off, but it was definitely damaged, and ended up getting myself disqualified because I had, from the earlier offs, I had accumulated enough incident points that the extra 3 self-spins didn't hit anything, just kind of spun off track a couple times. It was enough to get me to the 17-point incident cap and disqualify me on, I think the last lap, I think it was, as I was trying to limp it around. So I should have learned. I should, but I was afraid I was going to lose more positions if I had pitted. But in retrospect, that wasn't the right call. But hey, I'm not an expert by any means. So in the end, I finished in 11th position. So I definitely had a top 10 going there if I hadn't got involved in that accident. And still, in the end, 42 championship points. It was a good points night, even though I got disqualified and got a tire in the head and a mangled race car. But it was a good points day, so that's good.
And you had a thing stuck in your leg from the other race.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I still had that there. I mean, so obviously, But yeah, it
Pretty beat
was.
up.
I was. If you actually watch, I was pretty dejected at the end of it because I kind of deflated once I got the disqualification because I knew I was capable of so much more in that race, and I was disappointed in myself that I hadn't managed to get a better finish out of it because I knew I could. So I was kind of like, man, really? So anyway, that's how my race ended. So if you back up to that incident, Chad has, as you recall, has just missed that chicane. He's coming up on this mayhem that's about to happen, misses the chicane, so he has to do one of those I have to slow down and yield things. And back to you, Chad.
Yeah, basically that was a blessing in disguise because I mean, I'm not kidding. I literally missed the chicane, drove through the grass. I slowed down obviously a little bit, but then once I was back on the track, didn't damage the car, nothing was hurt, everything was fine. I got the little slowdown thing, like Trevor said, point 0.6, just to basically a half a second of slowdown time. So I start serving that. Well, I knew the third place car was coming, and the third place car didn't have any reason to slow down because he had made the chicane just fine. So he starts coming up. Well, about the time I got out of the chicane is when Trevor, thankfully, in my opinion, for me, jumped on the radio and said, the leader just got took out. Because at that point, obviously we explained it now, but at that point, Trevor thought that the leader had been wrecked. And so I kind of knew that there was going to be some cars hanging out, on the side of the road around the bend here. So I was kind of on the left-hand part of the racetrack serving my little black flag penalty. And about that time, I was still going decently fast, but, at that time I kind of came around the corner there and saw the mayhem and saw a couple cars sitting there. So I kind of stayed off to the left and basically just assumed that the third place car would realize what was happening and would kind of go to the right and also slow down for the crash. And I almost came to a total stop once I saw all the cars because I was like, okay, I don't know where to go. There's too many people here. I'm just going to sit this one out for a couple seconds here and then go. And, of course, that's where as Trevor mentioned, where the leader was kind of on his roof or on his top, whatever, flipping all through the area. But I didn't know that was the leader. I just saw a car on his top.
It's like, hey, it's just a car.
Yeah, I know. Excuse me. So, about the time that I kind of slowed down, the third place car, I don't even know if he ever slowed down. I couldn't tell. I mean, I didn't even go back and look to see if he did. I'm sure he did some. I mean, you would almost have to. There were cars everywhere. But it sure didn't look like it in real time because he just drove right through the wreck, like right in the middle of it. He basically just went in the middle of the racetrack and hit the car that was on his top, which ended up being the leader, and that damaged his car. So that crash, not only did it take out, I don't know, like the 10th place car, the 11th place car with Trevor, wherever they were in their positions at the time, it also took out the leader, as Trevor mentioned, and the third place car, essentially. The third place car still finished the race, but he was way, way, way down on power because it destroyed his aero by hitting that car that was on his roof. So, meanwhile, I basically came to a stop, and then once it looked like everything was kind of clear, I started driving away again. Past Trevor, was on his stream for like a tenth of a second, waved to everybody, and kind of drove on, no damage. Because I had to slow down for cutting the course by total accident. Didn't even know the wreck was happening. The wreck hadn't even started, until after I was probably like halfway through the chicane is when the wreck was happening. And after a couple of turns of being behind the third place car, who was now way slower than he had been, who became the leader because he drove through the crash, I was still in second. After getting through a couple of turns of like stopping because he was so much slower and not really having the best angle to go around him, I finally got to, I guess what you could consider the back straightaway, but the long straightaway before the start finish line, straightaway. Once I got there, I still had like 8 push to passes, and I was like, well, I don't really need to use this, but I'm just going to use one to give me some extra boost so I can get around him really quick, because I don't know how in control he's going to be, because I hadn't really been on a straightaway with him yet, and with his aero damage, so I didn't know how it was going to go. So I just started passing him on the right, and then I pushed the button and just was like, zoom. And so blew by him and quickly gapped him because he was way off the pace, and managed to hang on for the final 3 laps. And like Trevor said, it was in the last few laps, and won the race, of all things. Pretty lucky. But again, as I said before we explained all that wreck to you, I had actually run the leader down, because I was 10 seconds behind him, and then right before all that went down was 1.5 seconds behind the leader. And that wasn't just because he was behind Trevor's group the whole time. He had only caught Trevor's group, 1 or 2 laps maybe before that wreck happened. So somehow I may have had a shot at winning the race anyways. You never know. But I don't care how it happened. I freaking won an IndyCar race.
Yeah,
and made Trevor hate me.
Well, see, here's the thing. I've been talking up this series for, several weeks now. A month and a half we've been into this now. And for me, with my time available, I'm working pretty hard. I mean, I am putting a lot of effort. I'm putting more effort into this series, I think, than I ever have in any other series officially in iRacing. So this is kind of my big push of, I guess sort of jokingly say, talk about, or when before it even all started, future Division 8 champion, when I had that good arrive and drive IndyCar race, at Okayama, I think it was. But, I'm actually putting a legitimate effort into winning the Division 8 championship in this winter series. Like, this is, I am working, quote unquote, it's still sim racing, it's still fun, it's still a hobby, but I'm working hard at getting, doing the best I can in this series, and I'm getting, 11th, 9th, 12th place finishes and being pretty bloody proud of it, because based on my skill level. And then along comes Mr. Chad. Chad comes in and says, hey, what's this IndyCar thing you're doing? I don't know. Vroom! And then just comes in and wins the bloody race. It's like, I remember thinking in my head before all the mayhem started, it's like, I'm going to be lapped by Chad. I'm okay with being lapped by Chad on oval races and, all these other things that we do and the Power Series and stuff. You know what? I'm cool with that. Chad's pretty good at racing. That's been established. It's like, but you know what? This is my house. For the last month and a half, this has been my house. What's he doing coming in here with the mud on his shoes and messing up the place with all his skills? Like, man, It's like, so that was it was fun to have somebody to talk to for a while, because with the streaming, I do a lot of talking myself, and and on the road races, it's hard to watch the chat as much, but yeah, it was an eventful race, and I guess, and like we were talking about, it was kind of like 3 separate lessons from this race. One with Chad saying, as Chad mentioned, it's like, I lost my train of thought. I mean, I can think of 2 of them.
the cars that passed me that were going to wreck.
Yeah, racing like a veteran. Recognizing cars for how they're driving and adjusting your driving accordingly. Based on the long-term picture as opposed to just the short-term picture. And also we learned about, hey, if you're the leader, pay attention to what's going on. If somebody has a gap to the position that they're racing, you know what? A good racer will slow down that fraction of a second, give you all the room in the world, and that's fine. But if that guy is in a 3-way battle for position, in the top 10, no less, well, they're not going to pull over, and they shouldn't. That's you know what? You race your race. Yeah, he's a leader, and yes, you should try to give him room. Absolutely. But not at the cost of your own race. I mean, the leader should have recognized that that was happening and given more room or anticipated the situation differently. But then on his behalf, I mean, he had Chad bearing down on him, so he knew he had to clear them. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, looking at the replay, like he gave zero room. Like he expected that car to just stop or just disappear or something. The way he drove that corner, like the way he drove that corner.
Abracadabra.
Yeah, there's no way he was going to survive that corner the way he entered it. I mean, and it was a straight stretch. It was a little bit of a bend in the road, and he just kind of went over to the side as if the car wasn't there.
Yeah, and to take it a step further, I mean, even if he hadn't have hit the car, let's just say for a moment that the leader cleared the guy and everything was hunky-dory. That still was like one of the worst parts of the racetrack, to pass someone. Like anyone, like even if you're racing for position, like that's not typically a part of the track where you would pass someone. And yeah, I mean, and Trevor made the point, and I solely believe that whether it involved me or not, it was probably the main reason that caused him to do it, is that I was catching him. And I'm sure that he'd been watching that and was starting to become nervous about it, because there's 3 laps to go basically at that point. And so, I mean, I get why he probably made a move out of desperation, trying to clear the guy and get up through there so that he can get back into his clean air and make his rhythm come back to life or whatever. And, so I'm not saying that like I get what he did and I'm making excuses for him, but like it makes sense. But again, it was just like, I would not pass someone there. That was just, to me, that was not a very good place to pass, whether he didn't get wrecked or not.
Right. So, an eventful race for sure.
Yes.
And like I said, I mean, I still escaped with 42 championship points and an 11th place finish. My plan had been to, if it was possible, to actually do a third attempt at that race, because I know there's a top 10 in me at that track, but it did not come to fruition, unfortunately, so I never had another chance at that. But so I will. We have your Phoenix race, and then actually I raced last night. That one, there's not a lot to talk about that one, so I'll just get that one out of the way quickly. Racing at Pocono in the IndyCar, so that's our week 6 race is Pocono, and I love Pocono. It is a fun track, and thanks to Dean, gave me a setup for the track and a qualifying setup and a qualifying lap replay, so I could take a look at it, and I managed to not do too bad on that. Now, here's another thing where the weather difference kind of went the other way, and it was a lot cooler than I had been practicing at. And that made that track super grippy. Like, holy crap, all the grip in the world. So I messed up my qualifying lap because I did not take that into account. I raced my qualifying lap, kind of like I knew, based on the conditions I had had before, but there was a lot more grip there, so I could have pushed those corners way more than I did. So I ended up qualifying, 11th. I could have qualified a lot better than 11th based on the speed I had previously. But anyway, Pocono is, man, if you watch any of my streams, and, one thing that you will hear me say all the time since I started this race is, holy crap, I need triple screens. Because the situational awareness, because of the closing rates, and the fact that when you're racing around, especially in ovals, at any given point in time, there's a car inside you or outside you, and to lose sight of them while trying to, hold a line, like, because Indy cars are different. I mean, like in a stock car, for instance, when you're racing around, typically when you go around a corner, you kind of, I don't know, in my experience, people will always be staying in whatever lane. So if you're looking at wherever, depending on the track, you'll usually have some sort of markings, be it seams, be it lines, whatever, that'll indicate, here's the top lane, the middle lane, the bottom lane. And if you kind of hold your lane through that corner, if there's a guy inside, outside, you kind of, I don't know. In my experience, I've always been able to count on the fact that those guys are just going to hold to their lane as well. And as long as I hold to my lane, everything's cool. IndyCars are a lot more jumpy when it comes to going around corners. So I'm always terrified that if there's somebody inside me, like I always give way more room than I need to because I just cannot see them. And I'm going so fast to the corner, I can't really risk that, quick hit of the look left button for fear that I'm going to mess up my exit and hit the wall myself and mess up the corner anyway. So in that situation, man, triple screens would be a godsend. Or, moving forward, an Oculus Rift or, one of the VR headsets where I could just kind of glance over to the side. That would be so helpful in these races. But anyway, so qualified 11th. The start, we actually had a nice, good, long run at the start, which I was amazed at because while Pocono is really wide and there's a lot of room in those corners, or so it seems, because of the way the banking works and going through those corners, there's not, because you need a lot of that corner to actually make it. Like the line you take at Pocono gave me fits through turn 1 because you enter that corner so late that that gave me a lot of problem at the beginning of the race until I finally had the confidence to do it, because you wait so long before you turn into that corner. It just seems so wrong. Like the corner's already like when you're in a stock car and stuff, like they got the 3, 2, 1 signs there. I mean, in a stock car, like between 2 and 1, you are starting to brake, you are starting to make your move. Like here, it's like, okay, 3 goes by, 2 goes by, 1 goes by. All right, and now there's some advertisements. Now there's a safer barrier start. And it's like, okay, now you can turn. It's like, I swear, I'm like 3/4 of the way through this turn before I'm actually allowed to turn in this turn. It's really disconcerting. But anyway, going through those corners side by side is worse because, yes, you can do that late turn in, but you kind of really have to hold a specific line regardless of wherever your entry point is in order to make it through those corners, or else you wash out into the wall and smash up. And I was expecting a lot of that in the race because I saw a lot of it in practice. I did it a lot in practice. I even tweeted to Roy, it's like, how do you go through turn 1 without dying? Because I can't figure it out. Because I kept washing out, getting tight on exit and smashing the wall. Or trying to hold it off the wall and instead oversteering and spinning off into the infield. But we actually had a nice green flag run for the beginning of the race. I got myself into and it was a 2 pit stop race. Got myself into the first yellow, pitted. So now I had one more pit stop. I kind of knew how far I could go on gas. So I kind of had my race strategy planned out, and ended up getting by behind a couple of cars that were weaving like drunk madmen. And it's almost like they were, because you do kind of move a bit to try to break the draft in Indy cars, especially on the big wide front stretch at Pocono. But these guys were doing a lot all the time. Like, I don't know if they were just really excited that they had all this room and were having fun, or there was some sort of car control issue, or they were blocking. I don't know. But it was like, I did not on any level, say what you want, about my, burgeoning confidence when it comes to racing. On no level did I feel comfortable sticking my car in there, knowing that those guys would give me the room, because they didn't seem to know where they were going or what lane they were going to be in at any given time. So there's a couple times I backed off from a couple battles like that. It's like, you know what? No. Also, public service announcement. People, the tunnel turn 2. Stop sticking your nose in there at the last minute. That is not a passing place. Like that corner is super tight. And the number of times I'd set up my entry into that corner, and somebody at the last second, just before I turned in, would just stick their nose right in there. It's like, no, bad. No, get the newspaper out, roll it up, whack them on the nose. No, bad driver. But I guess they made the pass, so I guess it matters. But they only made the pass because I backed off, because if I hadn't, then we'd all both be in the infield care center. But anyway, the race kind of played out where, I kind of had a potential top 10 going. but and I played a strategy call probably a couple laps too late. I kind of debated it. If I had a crew chief, I would have had a crew chief in my air that says no, pit now, because I was stuck between two wobbly cars, could not pass them. I knew I was faster than them if I could get by them, but they were killing me in lap time. I couldn't get around them. I knew I had to make one more pit stop. I was in my window. It's like, if I was smarter, I should have just pitted right then. It's like, you know what? Get yourself a different spot to be in. And didn't. Waited a few laps. Made the call. Went in. And you know what race stewards really hate? They really hate that if you go into pit road and the speed limit's 60, they don't like it if you enter at 80.
Wow.
I mean, I was down to 60, like, I swear, by the time I got a car length into that thing, because, I was really hard on the binders to get into slow down. And I watched as the thing popped up, and the only thing I saw was, 60, your speed, 80, because that box pops up really soon before you hit the line. And I know I was down and on the limiter, like, I swear, like a car length into it. But it was too late, and they did not care. They did not accept my apologies. They did not accept my flowers or my chocolates, and gave me a 15-second penalty to add on to my pit stop. Which, all things considered, it could have been worse. I could have done it on exit. But, so 15-second penalty is not the worst. But in the end, it actually ended up being quite costly, because when I came out, I ended up getting lapped eventually, like with 3 laps left, I think it was. But if I actually look at the times where things were, there was like 3 cars, not battling, but relatively close together, all for position. Oh, I don't know, about 12 seconds ahead of me. So it's like, what could have been?
Yeah.
In the end, actually, Roby ended up with a good finish out of it. Where did he? I'll give him credit for that, because he had a great race. He was up in, where are you at? He finished in 12th, 2 positions ahead of me there. So he was one of the people I would have been actually battling out there for positions if I had managed. But unfortunately, it was not to be, because I cost myself with a silly mistake. There's a big lead up to it. I was just trying to push it as close as I could, and hitting too many buttons between shifting down, not locking up the tires and spinning, hitting the pit limiter. Too many things happened. Patting, rubbing belly, patting head at the same time. I'm an old man. I can't do this. Apparently, I need to slow down to about 40 and put my blinker on and then get in there. So, in the end, ended up finishing in 14th position, 30 championship points. Definitely could have done better. I was disappointed at myself on that one, because I definitely had more in me than that finishing position. If I can, it'll be more challenging this weekend. Like I said, my wife's actually out on a church thing this weekend, so getting in for that extra spot, probably not going to happen, although I'm going to try to make it if I can, to get an extra race in there, because I know I can do better. Especially considering the fact with the cooler temperatures, I know some of the adjustments I should have made to the car, to kind of take off some of the downforce to get some extra speed, because I didn't need it, because I had all the downforce I needed in the corners. Like, it was, grip was not an issue, except for what occasionally I just forgot to turn for turn 3. That was exciting. It was, I don't know what it was, turn 3. For some reason, I guess I figured 2 turns, I'm good. And there was several times, if you watch the stream, that like I went into turn 3 and I was like well past my turning point before I decided to turn. It's like I just forgot, oh, now I need to turn, because it's, it's kind of a big sweep and turn. And, it's like, it looks so unintimidating compared to some other turns on courses. It's like, do I even have to bother for this? I'm sure it'll be fine. The banking will just kind of throw me over. So I almost hit the wall a couple times on that one. Oh, and there was one other thing with one of the wobbly bobbly cars. My instincts proved true on that one. As I came through a corner, he ended up getting on the inside and passing me. And on the exit, this was turn 1. On the exit of turn 1, just came out of that corner, straight out to the wall, as if I was not there, and actually slammed into the side of my car and put me into the wall. But I saw him just at the last minute coming up, so I kind of counter-steered away from the wall and slowed down a little bit. So it ended up being a 0x hit, and didn't damage the car, but it was kind of, I knew he was there. I knew he couldn't be trusted. I was kind of ready, and then when I saw this little orange blur out of the side, I reacted because it's like, here he comes. So that probably would have been worse if I wasn't mentally thinking that that could happen. I would have, it might have caught me more by surprise, and we would have probably got tangled up and smashed out. So my cat-like reflexes, old man cat-like reflexes, saved me from damage on the car on that one. So ended up with a 0 ink race, which was good for safety rating. Ended up getting +1 I rating. So, the climb to 1,000 continues. I'm at 901 now. But like I said, could have been better. But overall, not a bad race. And early in the week, I know. But that race, as of this recording, this exact moment, because there's actually a race happening it's probably just about over. Anyway, there's a race happening right now. But at this exact moment, I am in first position in Division 8, sitting at 226 points. I am 2 points to the good in the lead, but there's more races to happen this week, so that'll change. But for the first time this year so far in my quest for the division championship, I am now leading the division. However, the guy who's 2 points behind me has also raced 2 less weeks, so that's probably not going to help the situation. But we'll see how that goes.
Well, congrats on being the points leader. Anyways.
For a brief moment. By the time we're finished recording this, I don't think I will be. But for this very, very moment. Also, it is now tied 3-3, and they're in a rain delay in the
yes, I know.
championship game.
I
did a little quiet, fist bump when old Bautista came up and hit a 2-run home run and tied it up at 3. But anyway, Phoenix in your championship run.
Yeah, so it was a busy weekend. Bathurst to Montreal to this. So I'll try to go somewhat quick about Phoenix, but there are a couple of things I want to mention. Continuing the theme of being a veteran. That was the theme last week, I think. Even though I did rookie stuff. Anyways, Phoenix, so this is a good thing about the way that John's done these last 3 races, is that he's gone in and he's played around with the weather and the track state for the dynamic track stuff, which I still don't believe works on the oval side. But anyways, he's gone through and kind of played around with settings and tried to find something that works pretty well. And then he's given us that information so that people that want to go out and get a lot of practice in, won't be jumping into like what Trevor and I were talking about with Montreal, where it's like, hey, super grippy here, super not grippy here. So that's kind of a cool thing. Now, if you recall, I had just won Auto Club a couple weeks ago and was 6 points ahead going into Phoenix. So, as I also mentioned on one of these past shows, Phoenix is a good track for me. It's not a great track, but it's a good track. And I felt like I would be able to get a decent run. That is until the Saturday evening before I did the IndyCar race with Trevor and made him hate me. I think I ran like 16 laps of practice at Phoenix and pretty much immediately knew that the setup was really tight with the way the weather and everything was. I don't know if it was just the setup, but at least the combination of it all made it tight. And what's the one thing I don't like?
A tight race car.
Exactly. So after I did those laps on Saturday, I actually quit. Like I literally went into my session, the test session that I'd set up with all the exact weather, exact track state, setup, everything. I drove out on the racetrack. I was mostly doing it to get my seat set up, but then I discovered that I already had it set up. But so I went out on the racetrack, ran 16 consecutive laps, kind of figured out towards the end of that, okay, it's getting tighter. Pulled over on the side of the road and quit. Because I knew that if I kept practicing, I was just going to get really mad. because it was, well, I shouldn't say really mad, but like really frustrated with the whole thing because I knew, and this was the day before the race, because I knew that I was just going to keep getting tighter. And I basically tried to tell my mind for the next, 24 hours essentially until the race started that I was just going to have to figure out how to pace myself in the race and try to avoid being really tight. I was basically going to have to give up trying to be fast every lap. Not that I overdrive the car every lap, but just trying to, instead of trying to be kind of the fast guy and trying to run really good lap times and things, but yet still taking care of my tires, I pretty much had to put my entire focus in the race on letting the car roll through the turns, which you already kind of do anyways at Phoenix, but I mean like really, really, really roll. So because of the fact that I was doing that, which was working in the actual practice session for the race, I just couldn't get any speed. I just could not put down a really good lap time. So in qualifying, I ended up qualifying in ninth. And just a quick mention, Phoenix was the fourth race of the Fast Five qualifying that they're doing as kind of a fun side points battle thing. So I missed out on that because you have to be in the top five to get points. So I missed out on that in Phoenix. I qualified ninth, as I mentioned. So through 4 of the 5 races for that Fast Five thing, the 5th one being in Charlotte in a couple weeks, I have totally missed it twice and won the pole the other 2 times. So doing great.
I don't always do well in Fast Five qualifying, but when I do, I win the pole.
Yes. So, anyways, I actually still have a chance to win it, though, by my math, if I have a really good showing in Charlotte and a couple of the other guys that are up there don't. But Charlotte is probably one of my worst qualifying tracks, so I don't anticipate winning that. But we'll see. So anyways, I started ninth. The very beginning of the race, we ended up running, I don't know the exact number, but I'll just estimate around 60 laps to start on a green flag run. It was only a 150 lap race, so it was a good chunk of the laps we ran under green. It was somewhere between 55 and 60. I made my way up to 5th by lap 30, and again was doing a very good job of pacing myself. But at the same time, while I was kind of happy with my progress because I didn't think I would have any progress, I was definitely to that point of lap 30 when I got into 5th. I was definitely the weak link, or the weakest of the top 3 championship contenders. So myself, Tim, and Matt. Tim and Matt, I think Tim started 5th and Matt started 8th, and they had very quickly driven themselves into the top 4, and eventually were 2nd and 3rd. Another thing to mention for the fun of it is that Dean and Adam, our teammates, started 2nd and 3rd, and Dean actually led a bunch of the first 30-some laps, or 20-something, and then him and Adam kind of fell back a little bit, not terribly, but they fell back a little bit, and I ended up getting around Adam and eventually got around Dean, which was part of my progress to 5th. But Tim and Matt were just far and above me so far as speed, and they didn't really seem to have problems with their car falling off or anything like that. And my car wasn't really falling off that much either, so far as the handling going away. But it was still getting tighter as we would go. And so anyways, Matt ended up eventually passing Tim. Matt got into 2nd. Tim was 3rd. Then we got to the point where green flag pit stop started, so I ended up being in 4th right before my pit stop. And I basically decided, okay, I know that Matt, still mathematically in it and everything, but Tim is a guy who's really close to me when it comes to points. So when he pits, and because I was right behind him at this point because he was in 3rd and I was in 4th, and despite my troubles, so to speak, and my struggling of the setup, I was still within about 8 9 car lengths of both Matt and Tim. We were all kind of still right on top of each other, even though I felt like I was just horrible. Um, and so I was like, all right, I'm pitting when Tim does. So I think it was right at or right around lap 50. Tim jumped into the pit road, and I followed him, right behind him, and got a pretty good entry into pit road, and we both pitted 4 tires, came back out, and I was basically about the same 6, 7, 8 car lengths behind Tim. Matt, I believe, stayed out a lap, and I think ended up, or well, he might have stayed out for more. He led a few laps somewhere in there. And then he actually came out after his pit stop ahead of Tim and I by about 8 or 9 car lengths, but I don't know where we were going to be position wise. And then a caution came out. So, we had all kind of run enough laps, most of the leaders, that it was like, well, we should probably pit again at this point. So we all pitted, and Tim did something a little interesting that I watched like a hawk, because he came down, and we all pitted again, because we had run just enough laps, and Tim actually took right sides only, came out as the race leader, whereas I think only like one other car took 2, and maybe I don't even know if anyone else took 2, and I'm not even 100% sure if Tim took 2, but I almost swear that he did, because he left pit road a lot quicker than everybody else. So everybody else took 4, and Matt ended up, I think, restarting 3rd, or maybe he restarted 2nd, I don't know, but I restarted like 4th or 5th. And the reason why I said I watched him was because I was very curious to see how his 2-tire strategy worked. Was he going to go straight to the rear? Was he going to hang on? Was he only going to lose a couple spots? Because, again, I had mentioned I felt like I was the weakest one. So I knew that the only way I might potentially beat Tim and Matt in this race was if I kind of played some strategy, and the only way you can really play a strategy and have it kind of work out for you is to take a right side tire deal, and I didn't even know if that would work, so that's why I watched Tim. We had a couple of cautions during this point, so we had a few of those laps under yellow, but there were also some good chunks of green flag racing, and Tim, on his right sides, never lost the lead, and Matt was all over him with 4. So at that point, I was kind of like, okay, if Tim can hang on with 4, I know I'm tight, and he's probably doing a way better job of driving the setup than, I can or am. But I basically, in the back of my mind, I was like, all right, if we get a caution at kind of a good time, where I feel like I might be able to pull it off, I might take 2 and just see what I can do. Anyways, we had some green flag racing, and then we got down to about 48 laps to go, and we had another caution. And on the caution before that one, Dean had also taken right sides, but that was one of those where not very many people pitted, and Dean and a few other people did. So Dean was more towards the back, but he took right sides. And I had already started debating with the caution with 48 to go about going ahead and taking right sides then. Because even though that was a long ways away, there's still some cautions might happen, and it was very difficult to pass. Not very many people could pull it off. And so I just kind of was thinking about it, and I even mentioned it on TeamSpeak to Dean and Adam. I was like, might take 2. And then Dean kind of reported what it was like for him, and he was like, I think it kind of freed me up a little bit. It seemed to be a little bit looser, and I thought, okay, I'm sold. So I came down pit road and took right sides, and obviously filled it up, because I think we still needed to. Yeah, I think that caution filling it up put us in our window for fuel, so we didn't have to pit for fuel anymore after that one. So I ended up winning the race off pit road. Matt also took right sides, I guess, seeing how well it worked for Tim. And so, but I beat Matt out, which is impressive, because I entered that pit stop 4th and came out with the lead. So I'm in the lead, Matt 2nd, Tim was like 3rd or 4th, somewhere in there. So we had a decent green flag run, then we had a couple cautions, then we had another green flag run, and then we got down to about 25 to go, and it was like, okay, we've run enough laps, we got to pit. Not for fuel, but just because people are going to want their tires now. And so I knew I needed to pit, but I also knew that there's no way that I was taking 4 again. Now, one thing I forgot to mention that I should have mentioned. On the pit stop where I took 2 and came out with the lead, Tim took 4. And so that kind of put him back, a couple spots. Whereas he had taken 2 on the pit stop before that. So we were kind of reversed strategy.
Right.
And that's important to note. So on this pit stop with like 23 to go or whatever, everybody pitted, and most of us pitted for right sides only, except for one car, and that was Dean Mull, who decided to stay out because he thought that some of the cars who were, kind of back where he was, I don't remember where he was before that caution, he thought maybe some people would stay out and he could bring some people with him and it would kind of help him because, like I said, passing's difficult. So, but that didn't happen. So I ended up coming out. I was in second. Dean was in the lead. I think Matt restarted third and Tim restarted fourth. So here the top 3 in points are all right there, and then Dean's on, 24 lap old tires, whatever. My left sides are really old, as are Matt's. Tim has the freshest left sides of any of us, and obviously we all have fresh right sides. So we get the green, and Dean and I had kind of talked about strategy because I was mostly concerned with getting to the bottom. I didn't really care that Dean had stayed out, but I was like, oh, great, I got to get to the bottom because I don't want to lose these spots to, Matt and Tim. So Dean had worked it out, and he was like, all right, I'm going to let you know when I go because it's leader's choice once the pace car goes down. So he's like, I'll tell you, when I'm leaving, hopefully I'll get a big jump, you'll get a big jump, and you'll be able to get down to the bottom, and, you won't have to worry about it. So I was like, okay. So he says, and go. And we go. We both get a good start. Well, Matt also got a good start. And so I couldn't really get to the bottom. So we go into turn 1, and I'm like, I think Matt was basically dead even with me on my inside. I got a pretty good run, though, through turn 1. Dean, on the other hand, drove in way too hard, thinking that, he was helping me out by, giving me the bottom. But he didn't realize at the time that Matt was already underneath me, so it didn't matter. So Dean completely overdrives turn 1, which, from my standpoint, ended up being perfect. Because Dean goes shooting up the racetrack to, like, the 3rd lane. I'm in the middle, and Matt's on the bottom. And anybody that knows me knows that if there's an open space, I don't care if we go 4 wide, I'm going. So it was the perfect setup for me to go 3 wide right up the middle, and I did. And in my mind, that was basically, I don't mean this in a bad way, but it was basically my championship. And I was like, I could finish behind these guys, lose a lot of points, or I could go back into the race lead and potentially hold it for the rest of the race and gain points. So that's why I went. And I drove right up the middle and ended up getting the lead as we went back down into turn 3. And this is where everything changed quite dramatically. Dean was still stuck on the outside for my 3-wide battle. He then got put into another 3-wide battle that was behind me, which put Tim in the middle, and another car who is not battling for the championship at all flew to the inside of Tim, and they all went into turn 3, and one car didn't make it out of turn 3. And that was unfortunately Tim. Tim got hooked by the car that was in the bottom. I don't really know where that guy was going to go. But anyway, so they collided. Tim went flying into the wall, destroyed his race car. His race was over with. And this was like 18 laps to go.
Ouch.
So that brought out the caution, obviously. And are you enjoying this story so far? And so I'm in the race lead. So we had, I think, like two more cautions after that. And then we had an 8-lap shootout to the finish. Tim ended up finishing 20th, being out of the race. My car, for some reason, just became the greatest thing ever in the world when we got to the 8 laps to go, and I was still in the lead and had to hold off Matt, and that was not very easy, but yet it was because I figured out really the only part of the racetrack that he could actually get a really good run on me and pull alongside me was by cutting the dog leg, which we were allowed to do. And every time he would cut the dog leg on a restart, he would pull up beside me in turn 3, and then I would just pinch him down, and he couldn't pull it out of the turn. And I would clear him coming off 4. So the easiest way to cut that out was to just start cutting the dog leg along with him. And that took care of that. So he never even really got a chance to pass me at all in the final 8 laps. And like I said, that was the best my car was the whole race. And it felt great. I ran really good lap times. They weren't my fastest of the race, but they were good. And they were really consistent. And I managed to completely steal a win in a race where I had no business finishing in the top 5. So that was, and because I took over the lead with like 47 to go, and the only laps in the final 47 that I did not lead were like the 3 that Dean led under caution. So because we had so many different leaders, I ended up leading the most laps, which is important in the final 3 races because now the 0 incident bonus point that we were getting throughout the season no longer exists, and it was replaced with the extra bonus point for leading the most laps. So basically, you don't have to worry about the incident thing. Now it's like if you go out and dominate a race, you get that extra point. So I ended up with maximum points for Phoenix.
Nice.
Which still blows my mind because I had no business doing it. And Tim lost a lot of points getting in the wreck, and there's no drop weeks anymore. Matt finished second. So I still gained points on him, but not as much as I did on Tim. So entering Phoenix, I had a 6-point lead on Tim, 20 on Matt. Exiting Phoenix, I now have a 23-point lead on Matt, who's now in second, and a 27-point lead on Tim, who's now in third. So that was pretty much the perfect night, which I still can't get over because, again, I was really struggling. So, needless to say, I was quite excited about that one.
Well, I mean, and considering how, I don't know, you weren't overconfident going into the championship, but like leading up to the weeks into the part where you're win it on the track championship section of the season, you really didn't think you had a shot. You had a couple of bad races leading into it where you were kind of like, well,
yeah,
that's done now, and here you are with a comfortable lead, but not an insurmountable lead, obviously. But a comfortable lead moving into the wild card race on Sunday. So,
yes, which for the record is Talladega. Which again, great track for me. If nothing happens to me, I fully expect to finish in the top 10. But that's the thing, anything can happen, and it can happen even in the last 500 feet of the race. I could be running in the lead and then finish 20th all in the last 500. That's the thing about Talladega. And so, but here's the thing that I'll say about that. I'm not scared of it. Like most people might be nervous. They might be, and I'm not being cocky either. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. But I've always embraced plate racing. Like I get how you don't really have control over your destiny, so to speak, and you're kind of a sitting duck in certain situations, and then you got to have help in other situations and blah, blah, blah. I get all that. I get why a lot of people don't like it. I, for one, actually like it. I like going 3 wide all the time. I like the tandem racing. I know we're not tandem racing, but we're pack racing. But, I like it all is what I'm getting at. And I embrace it. So, like, for me, I'm excited to go to Talladega. Most people in my situation would probably be like, oh my gosh, we really got to go there. Can we just skip this one and go to Charlotte? But for me, I can't wait for Sunday. Like, I'm excited. about going there. That doesn't mean I'm going to have a good race because I could have an awful race, and I could even leave Talladega no longer being the points leader. I could lose it. Um, but I mean, I could also be up by 50 at the end of the day. I mean, it's anything can happen. But like I said, I'm excited about going to Talladega. My plan is probably going to be the same as it normally is. Go to the front and stay there. And the way that I view it, regardless of what Matt and Tim do, if I get a top 5 finish, I'm going to be where I want to be heading to Charlotte, which is maybe at the worst like a 16-point lead, depending on what they do, if I got a top 5. So that's my goal. If I get out of there, even if I get a top 10 at the worst, that's still okay. But if I can get out of there with a top 5, then I'm going to be where I need to be going to Charlotte, and I'll be very happy with Talladega.
Well, we shall see. There is a chance I might come off my Power Series hiatus to make that race, just because I tend to like to go to plate racing, and although I'd be afraid to go in there, and it's like, all right, all Chad's got to do this. I'm going to help him, and then hook your bumper and take you out.
Well, just be sure that when I say you're going to need to come up, that you wait 1 second.
Come up now, burn! Here it come.
No, that would be great because actually, I kid Trevor for that wreck we had that one time at Talladega on the miscommunication, but there was a race at Daytona where I was the only one racing the Cup Series that particular time. Everybody else on my team was doing late models. Trevor took the night off from the late models, came over to race with me at Daytona that night to kind of be helpful if need be, which it was a need be. And I remember that race specifically. It was in the RCRL, and he helped me. We kind of ran mid-pack all race, kind of did our own little thing, and we got up, started going towards the end of the race, and I told Trevor, I was like, all right, we got to start making our way forward. Got up to like 6th, I think, and then we got detached from each other. Like, we ended up being separated, and I basically just told Trevor, we were like 3 laps away. I was like, okay, no offense, but I'm going to leave you now. And a wreck happened and kind of split the track, and I went right up through there. I think Trevor got in the wreck, if I'm not mistaken, and I ended up finishing like 3rd or 4th, and that race launched me. That was like the 4th race of the season. It started what ended up being a championship for me by the time the season ended. So you've helped me, before. So I'm expecting stuff out of you if you show up on Sunday.
And I'm expecting, if we're running 1-2 at the at the end of the race, that you'll do the courtesy and just move over and let me win the race so I can pop the boom confetti. I mean, it's like, sure, you could use the extra points, but I mean, who needs a win more, me or you? I mean,
yeah, that's true. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah, we'll see when we're 1-2 there. We'll see how that works out. Yeah. Well, first we'll get there, and then we'll play it by ear.
Yes.
But that was man. There was a lot more experiences this week than normal, and some of them even shared. So hopefully I'll be able to go to Talladega Sunday nights. It's Friday night, Sunday night, and be able to we'll have another shared experience, and hopefully it'll end up being a good one. So
hopefully.
But anyway, I think. Other than a quick reminder to everybody out there to continue to send in your not favorite tracks for our little game that we're playing so we can read those answers on the show moving forward. Other than that, I think I'm going to call this a show. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Because it is getting late, and I can only assume that my children are still alive. The thumping stopped a while ago, so, I'm sure everything's fine, but, hopefully they're sleeping. Or at least one of them is. The other one won't be sleeping yet. And the ball game started again in Kansas City's up 4-3, so everything's falling apart now. So I think it's time to end this.
End the show now.
End the show now before things get worse. But, excuse me. we will leave you with the words of Rob Slonaker, who is a professional driving racing coach, a former Skip Barber Racing School chief instructor as well. And he says about iRacing, driving the perfect lap is all about executing a plan for that lap. The iRacing simulation is so accurate you can develop and master that plan at a fraction of the cost, ain't that the truth, $1 of trying to do it in a real car. Even if it wasn't $1, it's still a fraction isn't even an accurate word at all. It's minuscule. Anyway, continuing on back to Rob, he says, when you do arrive at the track after practicing on iRacing, you have all your references and you are already up to speed. So, with all that being said, I will say, myself, this is no longer Rob. This is me. Thanks to all of you out there for listening. We really do appreciate it. I know we say it all the time, but we really mean it. Remember, the show is available for download on iTunes and Zune under the podcast section, where we would really appreciate you giving us a review to help us get the word out if you haven't done so already. The show is also available on YouTube and Twitch at Ratface Productions. That's my channel. And mirrored over on Chad's YouTube channel, it's Chadillac. You can check out the website for information, archives, links, and the polls you mentioned on the show over at iRacingTodayRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at iRacingToday. He is at It's Chadillac.
And you can email questions, comments, and poll suggestions. And, of course, your show fun race suggestions and not favorite track game answers to feedback at iRacingTodayRadio.com. And, of course, feel free to have myself and Trevor as friends on the iRacing members website if you haven't already. But if you aren't a member, join now, $1. And when you do, whether you do the 1 month $1 or you sign up for more than 1 month, please refer either Trevor or myself in the referral box when you sign up by entering Trevor's email, which is ratface@gmail.com, or mine, which is iracinglegend@gmail.com. But until next week, ladies and gentlemen, remember that the race is rarely won in the first turn,
but it is often lost there. Good night, everybody.